So I'm going to read this chapter, the second and third initiation. The candidate who has passed the first initiation has entered definitely upon the path proper, the path that leads to adeptship, to the portal leading out of the human kingdom into the Superman. Looking at the path from below, one might wonder what the aspirant is. One might wonder what the aspirant is not exhausted after his labor leading to his first initiation, that he does not shrink back, discouraged by the dizzy heights that he sees rising before him on the relentless, ever ascending path. But he has drunk at the first of life, and his strength is as the strength of 10, because his heart is pure, and the glory of his idea, humanity, which he sees with ever increasing clearness, has for him an attraction and inspiration with which no material stimulus or interest can ever compare. And that's the way I am. It's like this energy is beyond. And I've strived my whole life trying to find it and understand it. The first stage of his journey ends in a second initiation, to achieve which he must cast off his 3 samyojana, or fetters, which are sadhyadiki, the delusion of self. The second one is doubt of uncertainty. And the third is superstition. And that's where we're at in this world right now. Superstition is rampant. And when you're going through spirituality, there's a lot of superstitions. You have to search out all kinds of different beliefs, and you have to learn to see through everything to find your truth. The first of these is I am I, consciousness which, as connected with the personality, is nothing but an illusion, must be thrown aside at the very first step of the real upward path. But to cast off this fetter completely means even more than this, for it involves the realization and the facts that individuality also is in every truth one with all, and he can therefore never have any interests opposed to those of his brethren, that he is most truly progressing when he most assists the progress of others. So you have to help others. That's why I'm like, you have to teach. If you learn stuff, don't pretend you don't know anything, because all you're doing is a dishonor to yourself. As to the second fetter, the word of caution is necessary. People who have been trained in European habits of thoughts are unhappily so familiar with the idea that a blind, unreasoning adhesion to certain dogmas may be claimed from the disciple of any religion, school, or sect, that on hearing of the occultism, doubt is considered to be an obstacle to progress. They are likely to suppose that this path also requires from its followers the same unquestioning faith as do many modern superstitions. No idea could be more entirely false. It is true that doubt or any other uncertainty on some question is a bar to spiritual progress, but the antidote to that doubt is not blind faith, which is itself considered a fetter, as will presently be seen, but the uncertainty of conviction found on individual experiments and mathematical reasonings. While a child doubts the accuracy of the multiplication table, he can hardly acquire proficiency in a higher mathematics, but his doubts can be satisfactorily cleared up only by his attaining the comprehension found on reasoning or experiment that the statement contained in the tables are true. He believes that twice 2 are 4, not merely because he has been told so, but because it has become to him a self-evident fact. And this is exactly the method and only method of resolving doubt unknown to occultism. And this is where you do something and you prove it over and over and over and over. And that's what I've done in my life. I don't know how to say this word correctly, Vich, whatever, has been defined as a doubt or a doctrine of karma and in reincarnation, and of the efficiency of the method of training the highest good by his path of holiness. But the knowledge of these things also bring with it the vivid realization that the world is God's school for man, and that his plan is the evolution of the immortal life through the preserving form, and is wonderful and beneficent in every part. As he casts off his second fetter, the initiate arrives at absolute certainty, based either upon personal first-hand knowledge or upon reason, that the occult teachings upon this point is true. The third fetter is superstition, has been described as including all kinds of unreasoning and mistaken beliefs, and all independence upon the outward rite and the ceremonies to purify the heart. He sees that all the methods of help offered us by the great religions, prayers, sacraments, pilgrimages, fastings, and the observation of manifold rites and ceremonies are help and no more, and that the wise man will adopt such of them as he finds useful to him. And this is where I say you try practicing, studying, and looking at a lot of things to see what works for you and doesn't work for you. So adopts such as them as he finds useful to himself, but will never trust to any of them alone as sufficient to attain salvation. He knows definitely that within himself deliverance must be sought, and that however valuable these aids may be in developing his will, his wisdom, and his love, they can never take the place that of a personal effort by which alone he can achieve. The man who has cast off his fetter realizes there is no one form of religion which is a necessity for all men, but that through any and all alike, and even outside of them, the path to the highest may be found. The three fetters are in a coherent series. The difference between individuality and personality being fully understood, it is then possible to some extent to appreciate the actual course of reincarnation, and so to dispel all doubt on that head. This done, the knowledge of spiritual permanence of the true ego brings reliance on one's own spiritual strength, and so dispels superstition. Hope that makes sense to you. Because you got to stop the superstition. Because you're only failing yourself. You have to start proving for yourself what is real and true. And nobody else can do it. People will say you're crazy and everything else. Subdivisions of the steps. Each step of the path proper is divided into 4 steps. The first, it's mago, or way, during which the student is striving to cast off the fetters. And the second is the pala, or phala, literally fruit or result, when the man finds the result of his effort showing themselves more and more. Thirdly comes the bhagavaga, or consumption, the period when, the results having accumulated, he is able to fully satisfactory the work belonging to the step on which he now firmly stands. The fourth is the gutrabu, which means the time when he has arrived at a state to receive the next initiation. And this is where you're tested all along, always. And sometimes you go way around to come back to realize you already had the answer. Sometimes you go up, over, under, around, constantly attracting people and things because you won't believe in what it is that you understand. And one day you'll get back to where you're at and you'll realize you had the answers all along. And in the natives, we always say you go full circle. You'll start at this point, and there's a question, there's a desire, there's a thought, there's a belief, there's something you're going to do, and you'll go all the way around and you'll come back to this point. And you'll notice all the time that's a reality. But somewhere inside you have these answers, but you don't want to believe it. and you're waiting to be certified or told or made to believe or whatever that it is correct, but you're the only one that's going to understand that. That the candidate may become whatever. We see that the complete and entire freedom from the fetters of this stage on the path is absolute essence, or absolute essential. Before the man can proceed to the second initiation, the initiator chosen by the king demands evidence as to how the candidate has used the powers required by him at the first initiation. So when they give you these gifts, they're studying and watching you to see if you do good or bad. And like I say, we only borrow these gifts from the universe for a short period of time. And when we're done in this lifetime, we give them back. And the universe knows everything you've done, right or wrong. Amen. And this is where people want all these gifts and they want to do all kinds of silly things and pretend they haven't done anything wrong. It doesn't work that way. Before the man can proceed to the second initiation, the initiator chosen by the king demands evidence as to how the candidate has used the power acquired by him at his first initiation. And one of the most beautiful features of the ceremony is the part when those who have been helped by the candidate come forwards to give their testimony. It is also requisite for this initiation that the candidate shall have developed the power to function freely in his mental body. For although the ceremony in the first initiation is held on the astral plane, that of the second takes place in the lower mental world. It may seem difficult to reconcile that statement with the fact that initiations are described as occurring in certain halls or gardens, but really there is no discrepancy. If the Lord Maitreya acts as an initiator, the ceremony is usually performed either in his garden or in his great room. He himself is present in his physical body, and so in many cases with Lord Beshvasta Manu, who lives close by, all other presents are usually in the astral vehicles in the case of the first initiator. But in the mental body, in the case of the second, the great ones present focus their consciousness with the perfect ease at whatever level is acquired. But there is, of course, on the astral and mental plane, a perfect counterpart of everything on the physical. And so the accounts given are perfectly correct, and the position taken up in relation to physical objects are just as they're described. Account of the second initiation. Following the plan of earlier chapter, I once more give an account of the ceremony. Notice was received that the great gathering of the adept was to take place at the house of Lord Maitreya on the night of the full moon on the month of Chaitra, and the advantage would be taken of the occurrence in the august assemblage to admit certain candidates to whatever initiation as soon after as should be found convenient. Master Moray described the guardian of the young people to attend him not later than 10 o'clock. That evening many friends from India were hovering around, and when the candidates and their guardians went to the house of Master Kathumi, these followed discreetly and waited about respectfully in their near distance. Soon after they had reached the house, Master Moray entered, and the two masters left almost immediately for the house of Lord Maitreya, and disciplines following and remaining in the garden while the masters entered the house. This garden is on the southern slopes of the Himalayas, overlooking a vast expanse of the plains of India, which stretch away to the far horizon. It is sheltered, laying in a hollow, and protected by the pine woods at the back, which curve around on the right. Beyond this wood, a little eastward, is a very ancient stone house with pillars and wide veranda where dwells the Manu of our race, the great Lord Bhavasvata. The garden and Lord Maitreya was flooded with silver light of the tile white moon. which fell on the great clumps of the rhododendrons on the spring floor in bloom, the spring flowers in bloom, and shone dazzlingly on the white marble seats around the huge tree, the favourite's resting place of Lord Maitreya, where he now took his place on issuing from the house. The masters grouped themselves in a semicircle on the grass terrace just below his seat, taking their place on his right and left. On the terrace, a step lower, stood the two candidates between two masters who presented them, Kuthumi and Dajwal Kul. Behind them stood the appointed guardians of the young candidates in the lower world. The Manu sat in a little behind on the right hand of the Bodhisattva, and there shone out above them the glorious figure of Lord Gautama Buddha, who in his last earthly life had accepted from these two candidates the vow which can never be broken, and now gave his all-powerful benediction to them in the steps which they were about to take. Near him was the Mahakohan and the head of the 5 rays, and between them and the little above them flash out later in answers to solemn invocations of the Bodhisattva and the blazing star of the one initiator, the mighty king of the occult hierarchy, the Lord of the world. Such was exquisite setting of the ceremony of initiation. The Master Kuthumi and Dajwal Kul and two candidates step forwards, and the Bodhisattva asked, "Who are these that you now bring before me?" Master Kuthumi answered, "These two brothers who, having cast off the fetters of separateness, doubt, and superstition, and having repeated the harvest and shown the results of their labor, now desire to enter the path of the Skridagamin, I don't know how to say that, Skridagamin, and presented them to Butrabu." Lord Maitreya asked, "Will you continue to guide these brothers along the path as they seek to enter?" And the master replied, "I will do so." The Lord said, "Our rule requires that 2 of the higher brethren shall vouch for every candidate who presents himself on the second path. Does any other brother support their prayer?" And Master Dajwal Kul answered, "I do." The Lord said, addressing the guardians, "You, as 2 brothers living in the outer world, have taken charge of the younger of these candidates. You have had experience in your acceptant duties of guardianship. You are willing, as the body is still at tender age, to preserve in the guardianship and to help him as to tread the second path." They answered, "We are willing and glad to do so." The Lord asked, "Is your love for him still so strong that the work will be pleasant and easy?" They answered, "Our love for him is even deeper than it was when we began our happy task. He is easy to guide and eager to learn." The Lord said to the younger candidate, "And is your heart also full of love to these brothers? And will you continue gladly to submit yourself to their guidance, not permitting aught to come between your heart and theirs?" He answered, "I will gladly do so, for I love them both dearly, and I am grateful for them for their care." The Lord said to the 2 candidates, "You desire then to enter the path?" And they answered, "We do thus desire, if we are fit to enter on it." The Bodhisattva said, "Far as much as the immemorial custom of this brotherhood, when candidates are presented for such successive initiation, to ask how they have used their powers previously, conferring upon them, and for as much as the power is only a power when it is used for helping others. And that's why you have to use your gifts to help people, not to manipulate them, not to take all their money, not to con them, not to make them feel lesser, not to control or anything else. When we have these gifts, we have to honor and help people with them. I ask, therefore, who will testify to service done by these candidates, since last they stood before us we are admitted into the brotherhood? What definite works of teachings have they done? Whom have they helped? As a solemn word clove the surrounding air, seeming as it were rang around the world, as a summon, a great crowd of witnesses surged upon from the four quarters, a huge silence, gazing the loving, grateful eyes on the candidate standing in the center. Master Kuthumi spoke. These are they from many nations and from many lands from whom these two pupils have received light, strength, and comfort. From the lips of my elder son, too, the message has gone forth to many thousands and has labored unceasingly to bring the light to those who are in the darkness. They are here to bear witness. He has also written the book and many articles which remain as evidence of his loving labor for others. My younger son, the master smiled tenderly, is yet young in body for public work, but he has written a little book which gives to others the teachings I gave to him, and tens of thousands love him as their guide to us. They also are here, ready to bear witness. And many voices cry, we bear witnesses, and the very air seemed vocal with multitudinous were the testimonies, and the smiles of the Boa Vista grew sweet beyond expression, as he, the Savior of the world, listened to the answers he had evoked. The first guardian then spoke. I bear witness to the elder of these candidates, and in time of sore troubles and bitter strife he stood in perfect loyalty to both my brother and myself, apparently opposed, in unshaken strength and sweetness, serene and true. I bear witness also to his unwavered and unselfish work for others, using all his powers in service. To the younger, my beloved ward, I bear witness he is ever seeking to help those whom he meets and show rare skill in helping, while he sheds around him a radiant love of purity and makes his mere presence of benediction. All know the value of the priceless little book. The second guardian also spoke in the candidate's favor as follows. I also add my testimony in case of both these dear candidates. I bear witness that the elder has surrendered to me personally my loyalty, affection, and self-sacrificing help and support, that I have heard from many others of the inspirations and the light that he has brought into their lives. On behalf of the younger candidates, I bear witness that I have myself seen the evidence of the wonderful love and devotion which he has inspired in the members of his order, both the Adir and the Benars, and of the changes which has been produced in them. I have also received many letters in which the writers state that they owe a new conception of life to the book which he wrote. Lord Kuthumi called for the multitudes, some of whom learned the truths from each candidate, who look to him and follow him as a guide. Many come forwards to acknowledge the help given, each speaking with what he felt in his heart. And many said that at the feet of the Master had given them a new view of life. Some who have been much help, but could not be brought on this occasion because they are awake and engaged in their ordinary avocation, were repressed by living images made by their Master, and though these could say and do nothing, it is probable that some touch of the wonderful influence of the hour may have been conveyed through them to their originals. The crowd then withdrew while the ceremony proceeded. The Bodavistas then addressed the candidates, approving of the work they had done and expressing the hope that the new powers now to be conferred upon them would be used as well those had been which they already possessed. He continued, you have cast off forever the 3 fetters which bind your brethren on earth, and your own freedom must be used to lessen the weight of these fetters on them. You have learned with utter certainty that the idea of separated self is a delusion. You must now impress that certainty on their lower vehicles, so that in them there shall never be any action or thought for the separated self, but that all shall be done for the one self. Working through all will you endeavor to do this, and not cease your effort until you have succeeded? The candidate answered, I will. Lord Maitreya said, you have cast off the fetters of doubt, and you know surely that evolution is the fact, and that the method of evolution is a constant dipping down into matter under the law of readjustment. You must use the power now to be conferred upon you for the dispels of doubt in others regarding these vital facts, so they may share in the knowing you have gained surely not for yourself alone. Will you then use your powers for the enlightening of others? The candidates answered, I will so use them. And Lord Maitreya continued, have you transcended all superstitions? You know that man may find the light in any religion. You know the rites and the ceremonies have no intrinsic value, and that all which is done by them can be done without them, by knowledge and by will. Above all, you are free from the superstitions of the wrath of the power behind evolution. You know that all the existence within the universe is love, that is the gospel of universal love which you must spread among men. Will you seek to lift the darkness by spreading the gospel? The candidates answered, I will. Then Lord Maitreya added, never forget there is no darkness save that which is made by ignorance and delusion. It was well said, every good gift, every perfect gift is from above and comes down from the Father of light, in whom is no variable, neither shadow of turning. In him is no darkness at all, but men turn their backs on him and his light, and then walk in their own shadows, crying out that it is dark. And this is where, like I say, everything is evolution. We're trying to move up, or we're going to move through the fourth and fifth dimension into higher planes of existence. And people have to understand this, and they got to get out of their superstition and silliness and actually do the work. That's where I'm reading these books, trying to give people answers so they can decide to change their own lives. Hey, Peronia. The candidates were then put through some tests as the work on the mental plane. They had to examine people in the heavenly worlds, such as would be placed under their care in the future, and the Lord asked them that they would do to help each case, having in view of the limitations under which their charge would be laboring. One case was that the medieval monk, very full of devotion, but with exceedingly limitless ideas concerning God, the saints and the church, and the Lord questioned them as to what they would do to help his growth. All of that passes during the second initiation is done on the mental plane, and all are working in their mental bodies, not in the ordinary, whatever that word is, I'm skipping it. It's MAYAVI/RUPA, which they would use on the astral plane. After this testing was over, the candidate had fully answered the questions addressed to him, and they were led up to the Lord Maitreya and knelt before him. He rose, and turning towards Shambhala, he cried aloud, do I this, O Lord of light and life and glory, in thy name and for thee. Then over him flashes out a blazing star, giving a consent of the one initiator, and the august fires of Lord Gautama Buddha shone out with more blinding brilliance. While he raised his right hand in blessing, the Mahakohan also rose to add his benediction, as the Bodhisattvas laid his hands in turn on each bowed head, and then bent low in reverent homage before the Mighty One, and there was silence. In the stillness of the key of knowledge was given, the Bodhisattvas pouring out from his own mental and causal bodies rays of power, which falling on the mental and causal body of the newly initiated stimulated into sudden and splendid growth. the germs of similar powers within existing. As though a bud stimulated by the sun's rays should suddenly burst into the glory of the open flower, so did their mental and causal bodies suddenly unfold the power latent within them, expanding into the radiant bodies through them. Thus expanded intuition could freely play. A great new power thus set free to work, the Lord Maitreya said. Take now this new power which I give you, and trust yourself to it fearlessly. Bring your lower vehicle into such an order of responsiveness that it may pass freely through them to your physical brain and guide your conduct unerringly. So shall it shine upon the way which lies before you and prepare you to enter upon the third path. He ended with a great benediction, the star and the august figures. Near it vanished, all again bending low in reverence. The great ceremony was over. The ascended master then left their places, and each spoke to a few kind words to the newly initiated and blessed them. The master Kuthumi also addressed a kindly word to the crowd who had borne witness, who had withdrawn to some distance, as said above, but were now permitted again to approach, to bid farewell to their leaders, who in the light of the new knowledge just attained gave some advice to these followers and dismissed them with a blessing. Next one is mental development. The second initiation rapidly continues and develops as the mental body, and at or near this point of the pupil learns to use this MAYAVI/RUPA, which is sometimes translated as the body of illusion. This is the temporary astral body made by one who is able to function in his mental body. When a man travels in the astral plane, he usually does so in the astral body, and if it were necessary for him to show himself on the physical plane while he was functioning in his astral body, he would have to materialize a physical body around it. This is sometimes done, though not frequently, because it involves a great expenditure of force. Similarly, if he were working in his mental body and desires to manifest himself on the astral plane, he would need to materialize a temporal astral body, which is the MAYAVI/RUPA. When he had finished his work, he would draw to the mental plane once more, and the temporary body would vanish, its material returning to its general circulation of astral matter, whence they had been drawn by the pupil's will. And this is where I talk about this holographic machine and how they can project and create materialized bodies and then dematerialize it. And they're able to do this. And this is why I like Star Trek, because you see how they dematerialize and rematerialize. And there's energies and things, and these higher beings know how to do this. And to be an ascended master, you have to be able to make these kinds of things happen. With the powers from the Rupa, the man is able to pass instantly from the mental plane to the astral and back, and to use at all times the greater powers and keener sense of the mental plane. It is only necessary to form the astral materialization when he wants to become visible to people in the astral world. It is necessary the master shall first show his pupil how to make the rapa, after which, although it is not at first an easy matter, he can do it for himself. A very great expansion and development of the mental body takes place in the connection of the second initiation. But it is usually some years before the effects of this can show themselves in the physical brain. As they begin to do so, they unquestionably put a great strain upon the brain, as it cannot be instantaneously tuned to the necessary pitch. The danger point. The period after taking the second initiation is in many ways the most dangerous on the path. Although at any point until the fifth initiation is passed, there is the possibility of falling back. And this is where sometimes people fall back and they go and get stuck in these lower energies, or of spending many incarnations wandering about. But it is at this stage especially that if there is any weakness in the candidate's character, it will show itself. It should be impossible for a man who has raised himself to this height to fall back. But unfortunately, experience has shown us that even this does sometimes happen. In nearly all cases, the danger comes through pride. If there is the least tinge of pride in a man's nature, he is in serious risk of a fall. What we talk about down here as intellect is a mere reflection of the real thing. Yet some of us are proud of that, proud of our own intellect and insight. So when a man gets even a remote glimpse of what his intellect is going to be in the future, there is serious danger. And if he once starts on this line, he will have a terrible hard time getting back again. Nothing but unceasing and increasingly vigilance can enable him to pass through this stage successfully. It must be his constant endeavor to kill out every trace of pride, selfishness, and prejudice. And this is where everybody is stuck in this 3D world about, oh yeah, I'm going to be in the fifth dimension. Oh, I'm an ancient master. Oh, I'm activating my Merkaba and all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, quit all that silliness. Pull your pride out of the darkness. When we know these things from behind, we find sudden and curious illuminations thrown upon various texts of the Bible. This danger point in the life of the initiate is indicated in the gospel story by the temptation in the wilderness which followed the baptism of Christ by John. 40 days in the wilderness symbolize the period during which the expansion of the mental body given in the second initiation is being worked down into the physical brain, though for the extraordinary candidate, not 40 days but 40 years might well be required for the accomplishment. And I've been going through this stuff about 40 years of my life. I left the Arctic when I'm 26, and I hear I'm just about 40 years, soon another 3 years, and it'll be 40 years since I left home. And I went through all kinds of craziness, all sorts of stuff, trying to find this path and trying to grow and evolve while the world tried to drive me insane. And people condemn you and they do everything. They treat you really bad. The 40 days in the wilderness symbolize the period during which the expansion of the mental body given in the second initiation is being worked down into the physical brain. Though for ordinary candidates, not 40 days but 40 years might be well required for its accomplishment. In the life of Jesus, it was the period when his brain was being adapted to the incoming Christ. When the devil, who is the symbolism represented of the lower nature, comes to tempt the initiate, first to use his power for the satisfaction of his own needs. And that's where everybody is right now. They're using all their abilities for their own needs. So the devil, who in the symbolisms represents the lower nature, comes to tempt the initiate. First he uses powers for the satisfaction of his own needs. If thou be the Son of God, command that these stones be made bread. Then he is tempted to cast himself down from the pinnacle of the temple, thus performing a miracle which would astound the populace. And lastly, he is shown all of the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them. And the devil says, all these things I will give thee, if thou wilt fall down and worship me. He is tempted to use his powers to gratify his own ambitions. Each to these temptations represents a different form of pride. And everybody has to go through that. To go into the fourth and fifth dimension, you got to go through all that crap. There's only one way to do this. People think there's a way of trying to find a way to free. It doesn't work that way. Once you understand these laws and all this stuff I've been teaching, then you'll understand. There's no other way to do it. And lastly, it is shown that the kingdom of the world and the glory of them, and the devil says, all these things will I give to thee, if thou wilt fall down and worship me. He is tempted to use his power to gratify his own ambition. Each of these temptations represents a different form of pride. And there's lots of forms of pride, but people are trying to be very ignorant to this. And everybody wants gifts and abilities to show off, pretending to be Harry Potter, or they want to pop into other dimensions and worlds and realities and deny everything on this planet. It doesn't work that way. If you want to get into the future and be the fifth dimension, you better want to learn this stuff and do right. Just as the first great initiation corresponds with new birth, so may the second initiation be justly compared to the baptism of the Holy Ghost and of the fire. For it is the power of the third person and the blessed Trinity that is outpoured at the moment, descending in what may be inadequately be described as a flood of fire, a flaming tide of living light. The man at this stage is spoken of among the Bovistas, and the man who returns but once, which means that he who has reached this level should not but one more incarnation before attaining Adarship, the fourth initiation, after which there is no compulsory physical rebirth. The Hindu name for this second step is Kuchaka, Kutichaka, the man who builds a hut, who has reached a place of peace. And this is where the real yogis, they give up everything in their life and they only focus on God and nothing else. And they don't work, they don't do anything. If they had billions of dollars, they give it away. If they were married, they leave their family. Whatever it is, they give up everything. And that's real yoga. Not this phony Western yoga where you dress up in Lululemons and you have a head bun and a mala beads and you prance around in a yoga studio. At this stage, no additional fetters are cast off, but it is usually a period of considerable psychic and intellectual advancement. If what are commonly called psychic faculties have not been previously acquired, it is a tradition that they should be developed at this stage, as without them it would seem practically impossible to assimilate the knowledge which must now be given, or to do the higher work for humanity in which the initiate is now privileged to assist. He must have the astral consciousness at his command during his physical awakening life, and during sleep and heaven worlds will be open before him. That's where you're a conscious dreamer. You're totally awake and conscious with everything. For the consciousness of man, my puzzle is slowly coming on. It's slowly dialing in here, so don't get all crazy if it's showing the live will end in so many minutes and waiting for the puzzle to come on. I don't know if they're trying to disconnect it or what, but we'll see if it happens or not. I'm reading really deep truths here, and it shows I got about 4 minutes and 26 seconds, and the thing has just got a slow dial, and it's not coming on for me to do the puzzle, so I'll just keep talking until it pops on. Keep trying to make it happen, but it's not dialing it up. I could see in the background people are sharing. It's called the Masters and the Path. Oh, there we finally go. Took a while. There we go. Now it's dialing up to see if I did it correct. So this is something you have to realize. There's no other way to do this but to know these things, and you have to go through these stages. And people just want to be these masters. They want to go from kindergarten to university in a blink of an eye. It doesn't work that way. I'm in my 60s and I'm still growing and learning. I'm still reading and studying and trying to find answers and teach people. And whatever it is I'm supposed to do, I just keep pushing forwards no matter what. At this stage, no additional fetters are cast off, but it is usually a period of considerable psychic and intellectual advancement. If what are commonly called psychic faculties have not been previously acquired, it is tradition that they should be developed at this stage, as without them it would seem practically impossible to assimilate the knowledge which must now be given, or to do the higher work for humanity in which the initiate is now privileged to assist. He must have the astral consciousness at his command during his physical waking life. And during sleep, the heaven worlds will be open before him. For the consciousness of man, when away from his physical body, is always one stage higher than that is while he is still burdened with the house of flesh. Dr. Bassett, however, in her initiation, the perfection of man, supplies us with the alternative interpretations of this. She says that before a man can come to the third initiation, he must learn to bring his spirit of intuition down to the physical consciousness so that it may bind in him and guide him. Then she said, this process is usually called the development of the psychic facilities, and it is so in a true meaning of the word psychic, but it does not mean that the development of clairvoyant or clairaudience, which depends on a different process. The third initiation. When the candidate has passed through the 4 substages of the second initiation, has once more become GOTRABHU, he is ready for the third initiation to become whatever's ANAGAMIN, which means literally, he does not return. For it is expected of him that he will attain the next initiation in the same incarnation. And there are people right now ready to go into this next initiation. That's where they're going into the 4th and 5th dimension, and they'll be in the future. And you can't bullshit this. The Hindu name for this stage is Hamsa, which means a swan, and the word is also considered to be a form of a sentence, Soham, that I am. There is a tradition too. The swan is able to separate milk from water, and the sage is similarly able to realize the true value of living beings, of the phenomena of life. The initiation is typified of the Christian symbolisms by the transfiguration of Christ. He went up into the high mountain parts and was transfigured before his disciples. His face did shine as the sun, and his remnants was white as light, exceeding white as snow, so as no fuller on earth can white them. This description suggests that Augeideos, Agiodes, the glorified man, and it is no inaccurate picture of what happens at this initiation, for just as the second initiation is principally concerned with the quickening of the lower mental body, so at this stage the causal body is especially developed. The ego is brought more closely into touch with the monad and is thus transfigured in every truth. Even the personality is affected by the wondrous outpourings. The higher and the lower selves become one at the first initiation. The unity is never lost, but the development of the higher self that now takes place can never be mirrored in the lower worlds of form, although the two are one of the greatest possible extent. The gospel story tells of the transfigurations. There appeared Moses, Elijah, and chief figures of the old dispensation, one of the greatest of the Jewish prophets and others representing the Jewish law. Thus, the two dispensations or methods of approach to truth, that of the following of the law, that of the inspiration of prophecy, are represented as with him who was about to establish a new dispensation, that of the gospel. And all these symbols have meanings referring to the actual fact of the third initiation. And there's a lot of symbolisms in the Bible people don't understand. Another symbol relating to the same step appears in the gospel story of the presentation of the Christ to the Father in the temple. In this traditional account, this is what is out of place, for the Christ is then presented as a little child. At this stage, the man's progress, he has to be brought before the spiritual king of the world, the mighty head of the occult hierarchy, who at the third step either confers the initiation himself or disputes one of his pupils, the three lords of the flame who come with him from Venus to do so. The initiation has taken place. Thus the Christ is brought into the presence of his Father. The Buddha in the initiation is raised until it becomes one with its origin of the nirvanic plane, and every wonderful union between the first and the second principle in man is then effected. And then nirvana, what they try to tell you, is really distorted because it's a higher existence. The fourth and fifth fetter, the Anagiain, enjoys, while moving through the round of his daily work, all the splendid possibilities given by full possession of his faculties of the higher mental plane. When he leaves his physical vehicle at night, he enters once more into the worldly widened consciousness that belongs to the Bodhic plane. While in this stage, he has to throw off his lingering remains of what are called the fourth and fifth fetters, Kamaraga, and the Ptigha, attachments to the enjoyments of sensation, typified by earthly love and all possibilities of anger and hatred. The aspirant must free himself from the possibilities of being enslaved in any way by the eternal things. It is not by any means that he will not feel the attraction of what is pleasant or beautiful or clean, nor the repulsion for the opposites of these things. He will still take them into account in the course of his work, but he will not let them be a deciding element in his duty, and will override them entirely on those emergent occasions when it is necessary for his work. Here we must regard against the possible misconceptions, one with which we frequently meet: the purest and noblest human love never dies away, is never in any way diminished by occult training. On the contrary, it is increased and widened until it embraces all with the same degree of fervor which at first was lavished on one or two only, but the student does in time raise above all considerations connected with the mere personality of those around him, and so is free from all the injustice and practicality which ordinary love so often brings into his train. Nor should it for a moment be supposed that in the gaining this wide affection for all, he loses the especial love for closer friends. The usual perfect link between Adna and Lord Buddha, as between St. John and Christ, is on the record prove that. On the contrary, this is erroneously identified, and the tie between the master and his pupil is stronger farther than any earthly bond, For the affections which flourish upon the path of the holiness is the affection between ego, not mere between personality. Therefore it is strong and permanent, without the fear of diminution or fluctuations, for it is that perfect love which casts out fear. Chapter 10 is the higher initiations, and it's going to talk about Christian symbology, and then it's going to go into nirvana. So this should give some explanations to different things. And basically understanding their teachers, and they're looking for students, they're looking for people, and after hundreds of thousands of lifetimes, maybe you're that student, but you've been asleep to all these things, and like I say, connecting and trying to understand who your teacher is. So hopefully I can finish this chapter today, and then when I get back I'll finish the book. So chapter 10, the higher initiate, the Arhat, A-R-H-A-T. During the stage following the first, second, and third initiation, the candidates are gradually developing the Bodhi consciousness. At the fourth initiation, he enters the nirvanic plane, and from then onwards he is engaged in climbing speedily through that, or rather through that division of it, consisting of 5 lower subplanes on which the human ego has being. This initiation is in one way a midway point, as it is usually said that the 7 lives are occupied on the average at normal times between the first and the fourth initiation. The 7 lives also between the fourth and fifth, but these figures are capable of very great reduction or increase, as I have said before, and the actual period of time employed is in most cases not very great, since usually the lives are taken in immediate succession without interludes in the heaven world. The candidate who has passed the fourth initiation is spoken of in Buddhist terminology as Ahart, A-R-H-A-T, which means the worthy, the capable, the venerable, or the perfect. And in the Eastern books, very many beautiful things are said about him, for they know at what level of evolution he stands. The Hindus call it the Paramahamsa, P-A-R-A-M-A-H-A-M-S-A, the one above and beyond the Hamsa. So Christian symbols. In Christianity symbology, the fourth initiation is indicated by suffering in the Garden of Gethsemane, the crucifixion and resurrection of the Christ. Though since there are certain preliminary stages, it may be more completely symbolized by various events that are said to have taken place during the Holy Week. The first event in the series was that the Christ raised Lazarus from the dead. This is always commemorated on the Saturday before Palm Sunday, though according to the Gospel narrative it took place a week or two earlier. On the Sunday, there was a temporal entry into Jerusalem. On Monday and Tuesday, the delivery of a number of addresses in the temple. On Wednesday, the betrayal of Judas Iscariot. On Thursday, the founding of the Holy Eucharist. On the night between Thursday and Friday, the trial before Pilate and Herod. On Good Friday, the crucifixion. Holy Saturday was spent in preaching to the Spirit in prison, and at midnight on Saturday, or rather at the first moment on Sunday morning, Christ rose from the dead, triumphant for evermore. All these details of Christ's drama have a relationship to what really happens in connection with the fourth initiation. That Christ did something unusual and wonderful in the raising of Lazarus on Saturday, and it was very largely as a result of that he enjoyed his one earthly triumph so soon after, for all the people came together when they heard of the raising of the dead man. They waited for him, and when he came out from the house to go on the way to Jerusalem, they received him with an ovation of great display of feelings, and treated him as in the East they still treat anyone whom they think to be holy. So he was escorted by the people with great enthusiasm into Jerusalem, and having won that little earthly recognition, he naturally took the opportunity. It says choices lottery.
Maybe I won.
He naturally took the opportunity. Sorry, I'll go back here again. He was escorted by people with great enthusiasm into Jerusalem, and having won that little earthly recognition, he naturally took the opportunity of teaching them, and gave the address in the temple, to which great crowds came to see and hear him. This is symbolisms of what really takes place. The initiate attracts some attention and gains a certain amount of popularity and recognition. Then there is always the trait to turn upon him and distort what he has said and done, so that it appears to be evil, as Roisbeck put it. Sometimes these unhappy ones are deprived of the good things of the earth, of their friends and relations, are deserted by all creatures, their holiness is distorted and despised. Men put a bad construction on all the works of their life, and they are rejected and disdained by all those who surround them. Sometimes they are afflicted with divers diseases. Then follows a shower of oblique and abuse, obloquy, and abuse, and his rejection by the world. After that comes the scene of the Garden of Gethsemane, when the Christ feels himself utterly forsaken, and then he is held up to derision and crucified. Finally there is a cry from the cross, O my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Madame Blavatsky held the theory which she expounded in the Secret Doctrines, which I am not able to personally to verify, that the real meaning of those words was, my God, how dost thus glorify me? I do not know which two renderings is more accurate, but there is great truth in both of them. It is one of the features of the fourth initiation. Man shall be left entirely alone, for he has to stand alone on the physical plane. All his friends turn against him through some misunderstanding. It all comes right afterwards, but for the time the man is left with the feeling that all the world is against him. That's the way I've felt many, many times throughout my life. Perhaps this is not so great a trial, but there is another and inner side to it, for he has also the experience of the moment, the condition called achivi, which means the waveless, which is without vibration. A state of achivi is not, as has been popular to suppose, some kind of hell, but it is a condition in which a man stands absolute alone in space and feels cut off from all life, even from that of the Logos. And it is without doubt that most ghastly experiences that it is possible for any human being to have. It is said to last only for a moment, but to those who have felt its supreme horror, it seems an eternity, for at the level time and space do not exist. The appalling trial has, I think, two objects. First, the candidate may be able to fully sympathize with those to whom of each he comes as a result of their actions, and secondly, that he may learn to stand absolutely apart from everything external, triumph in his utter certainty that he is one of the Logos, and that this overwhelming concentration caused by the sensations of isolation for him is nothing but an illusion and temptation. Some have collapsed before this terrible test and have had to go back and begin over again to climb towards a higher initiation. But for the man who can stand firm through its awful nightmare, it is indeed a wonderful experience, however formidable. So that while to the trial itself the interpretation, "Why hast thou forsaken me?" might be applicable, "How thou dost glorify me," would well express the feelings of the man who came forth from this victoriously. The initiation differs from all others in that it has a strange double aspect of suffering and victory. Each of the early initiates was symbolized by the Christ system by one definite fact: the birth, the baptism, the transfiguration. But in order to represent this fourth initiation, a series of events has been found necessary. The crucifixion of all the varied sufferings from which it was culminations were employed to typify one side of this initiation, while the resurrection with the triumph over the death represents the other side. Always at the same stage there is suffering, physical, astral, mental. Always there is a condemnation by the world and the apparent failure. Always there is a splendid triumph upon higher planes, which however remain unknown to the outer world. The particular type of suffering which invariably accompanies this initiate clears off any errors of karma which may still stand in the initiate's way, and the patience and joyousness with which he endures them have great value in the strengthening of his character, and help to determine the extent of his usefulness in the works which lie before him. The crucifixion and resurrection, which symbolizes the actual initiation, are thus described in ancient Egypt formula. Then shall the candidate be bound up by wooden crosses. He shall die. He shall be buried. He shall descend into the underworld. After the third day he shall be brought back from the dead. Only after 3 clear days and nights and parts of the fourth had passed was still entranced candidates of those ancient days raised from the sarcophagus in which he had laid, then borne into the outer air at the eastern side of the pyramid or temple, so the first rays of the rising sun might fall upon his face and awaken him from his long sleep. This is an old proverb, "No cross, no crown," which may be taken to mean that without man's descent into matter, his bindings on the cross of matter, it would have been impossible for him to gain the resurrection and receive the crown of glory. By the limitations and through the sorrow and the troubles has gained the victory. It is impossible for us to describe the resurrection. All words that we can employ seem to sully its splendor, and any attempt at description seems almost blasphemy. But this much may be said, that a complete triumph has been obtained over all sorrow, troubles, difficulties, temptations, and trials, and it is his forever because he has conquered by knowledge the inner strength. We may recall how the Lord Buddha proclaimed his freedom, and it says, "Many a house of life hath held me, seeking ever him who wrought his prison of his senses and sorrow fraught. Sore was my ceaseless strife, but now, thou builder of the tabernacle, thou, I know thee, never shall thou build again the walls of pain, nor raise the roof tree of deceit, nor lay fresh rafters on the clay. Broken thy house is, the rigid poles split, delusion fashion it, safe pass I thence deliverance to obtain." It's quite the poem. It says a lot. So now on nirvana here. For the adherent, henceforth the consciousness of the Bodhic plane is his while still in the physical body, and when he leaves the body in sleep or trance, He passes at once into the utterable glories of nirvanic plane. At his initiation, he must have at least one glimpse of that nirvanic consciousness. Just as at the first initiation, there must be a momentary experience of the Bodhic. And now his daily efforts will be to reach further and further up into the nirvanic plane. It is a task of a prodigious difficulties, but gradually he will find himself able to work upwards into the ineffable splendor. The entry into this utterly bewildering, and it brings as its first sensation an intense vividness of life, surprising even to him who is familiar with the Bodhic plane. The surprise has been his before, through in the lesser measures whenever he mounted for the first time from one plane to another. Even when we raise first in full and clear conscious from the physical plane to the astral, we find a new life to be so much wider than any that we have hitherto known that we exclaim, I thought I knew what life was, but I have never known before. When we pass into the mental plane, we find the same feelings redoubled. The astral was wonderful, but it was nothing to the mental world. When we pass into the higher mental planes, again we have the same experience. At the very step, the same surprise comes over again, and no thought beforehand can prepare one for it, because it was always far more stupendous than anything that we can imagine. And life on all of those higher planes is an intensity of bliss for which no words exist. European Orientalists have translated nirvana as annihilation, because the word means blown out, as the light of a candle is extinguished by a breath. Nothing could be more complete anesthesia to the truth, except in the sense that it is certainly an annihilation of all that down here we know as man, because there is no longer man, but God in man, God among other gods, though less than they. Try to imagine the whole universe filled with it, consisting of an immense torrent of living light, a whole moving onwards, without relativity and restless outward sweep of vast seas of light, light with a purpose, if that is comprehensible, tremendously concentrated, but absolutely without strain or effort. Words fail. At first we feel nothing but the bliss of it, and seeing nothing but the intensity of the light, but gradually we begin to realize that even in this dazzling brightness, there are brighter spots, nuclei, as it were, through which light obtains a new quality that enables it to become perceptible on lower planes, whose inhabitants without this aid would be altogether beneath the possibility of sensing its effulgence. Then by degree we begin to comprehend that these subsidiary suns are the great ones, the planetary spirits, the great angels, karmic deities, Dehan Kohans, Buddhas, Christs, and Masters, and many others who are to us not even names, and to see that through them the light and the life are flowing down to the lower planes. Little by little, as we become more accustomed to the marvelous reality, we begin to perceive that we are one with them, though far below the summit of their splendor, that we are part of the one that dwells somehow in them. Somehow dwells in them all, and also in every point of space between, that we ourselves are also a focus, and through us, at our much lower level, the light and the life are flowing to those who are still further away, not from it, for all part of it, and there is nothing else anywhere, but from the realization of it, the comprehension and experience of it. Madame Blavatsky often spoke of this consciousness as having its center everywhere and its circumference nowhere. A profoundly suggestive sentence, attributed variously to Pascal, Cardinal de Cus, Zohar, but belonging to the rite of the Book of Hermes. Far indeed from inhabitants in such consciousness, The initiate reaching it has not in the least lost the sense that he himself, his memory is perfectly continuous. He is the same man, yet all this is well, and now indeed he can say, I am I, knowing that I really means. Wonderful well was this expressed by Sir Edwin Arnold in The Light of Asia, and it says here, seeking nothing he gains all, foregoing self the universe grows I. If any teach nirvana, ID, to cease, say unto such the lie, as any teach nirvana is to live. Say unto such they err, not knowing this, nor what light shines beyond their broken lamps, nor lifeless, timeless bliss. Not lifeless in the sense of being dead, for is the very exemplification of expression and most vivid life imaginable, lifeless because he is far beyond both death and life alike, quite the samsara forever, hell and bin defined as time without God, heaven as God without time. Surely this latter description is still more applicable to nirvana. Any description of nirvana which we may attempt must sound strange. No words can we use can give even the least idea of such an expression as that, for all that which our minds are acquainted has long ago disappeared before the level is attained. There is, of course, even at the level a seath, some sort for the spirit, impossible to describe. For in one sense it seems as though it were an atom, and yet in another it seems to be the whole plane. The man feels as if he were everywhere, but could focus anywhere within himself, and everywhere for a moment the outpouring of force diminishes. That is for him the body. The effable splendor of nirvana necessarily surpasses all physical comprehension, and consequently even the most poetic attempts to depict it are foredoomed to failure. Nevertheless, each man who writes of it approaches it from a different angle. Each may contribute some point which the others have missed. I have already tried to give my own impression. Let me now quote for you those of my lifelong friends and brothers, Bishop George Sidney Arbel, who in his book Nirvana has made very remarkable and most valiant efforts to convey that which cannot be conveyed. We all fail, of course, yet I cannot but feel that he comes nearer to the achievement of success than I have done. He writes, my first remembrance is seeing that Master K.H., looking as I have never seen him before, radiant, he is always, supremely radiant, but now he was more than radiant. I cannot find a word down here to describe him in the glory in which I perceive him with the first flash of nirvanic consciousness. Majestic and radiant are poor words, finding perhaps the expression better, for just for a moment I was overwhelmed. I almost wanted to veil my face from the sight of him. I yet could not keep my eyes from him, so unfathomably splendid did he appear, only less glorious than the king, as I afterwards realized, though at some time no greater glory could I conceive. I summoned up my courage. I fell as if I was saying to me, welcome to a new kingdom which you must learn to conquer. In his power my consciousness unfolded, and I stepped as it were across the threshold into nirvana. Words and phrases, however beautiful, however majestic, almost desecrate as they strive to describe conditions here or there. Even the faintest touch of the first experience of his lofty level dwarfs into significance all other experiences of all other planes, save only the entry into the presence of one initiator. I remember my first glimpse of the Bodaic plane on the occasion of admission to the ranks of the Great White Brotherhood. I recall to this day my marveling at the visions of the Master in this bodaic vehicle. And well I do remember in the days that followed the wondrous sense of unity with all things, with the trees, the flowers, the feelings with them all, growing with them and in them, suffering and rejoicing in and with them. I remember too the castings off of the friends of ages, the casual bodies. I remember a vivid rendering constraint between the moments before and the moments after the glimpse into the new kingdom. But today the Master seems to me as one who I have never known before, robed in glories of the kingdom. I am entering as a little child. The new consciousness enfolds me, and in the moment my world is full of new, strange, glorious values. All is different, supremely different, though the same. A new divinity is opened to my eyes and unfolds to my gaze a new meaning, a new purpose. In this bodaic unity transcends, glorifies a more marvelous unity. In some wondrous way it is merged in a state vaster and more tremendous. There is something even more true than unity, something more real. It seems impossible, yet it is so. Pretty explanatory, right, to what people say nirvana is way beyond what you could put into words. And nirvana is not really nothing. It's, like he said, it's exploding out. What is the nature of that of which the bodaic glory is but the limitations? I must use words, and words seem a terrible anticlimax. I can only say it is the glory of the light transcended, a world of light which is the image of God on eternity. God's own eternity. I am face to face with an unspotted mirror of his power and with an image of his goodness. And the mirror, the image, is an endless ocean of light on which I become, though in one sense I already have been a part, by the apotheosis of at one-ment, on plane after plane below. Brotherhood in outer worlds, unity of bodaic world. Light transcends into nirvana. This light transcended is nearer to the real even that of the bodaic unity, which hitherto had seemed the most stupendous facts in the world. Light the beginning, light the path, light the future, God said. Let there be light. And there was and is light indescribable. Beautiful as the light in the world, it is but a faint and feeble image of the light triumph. The adjacent somehow seems appropriate. To these religious of the real, it is the sunlight of the sun ear. It descends into the form into which we know it. It is the light purified of form. It is the light which is the life of form. It is an ever-present imitation of immortality, a future within the now, the yet eternal. It is, and I do not say the, apotheosis and the essence of the light we know. All the glory of the most wonderful dawn. The one feels nothing can be more wonderful than a perfect Eastern dawn, is brought to glorious fruitations and splendid perfection in the noonday, which is nirvana. God is light. Light is God. Man is light. All is light. A new meaning to this ancient Egyptian exhortation. Look for the light. Follow the light. Perceive and learn to be at one with the light of God in all things. I look upon the world. I see the world in terms of light. God light in manifestation, in man light, in rock light, in tree light, in creature light. All is light, blinding in glory in the center, translated into colors as it radiates towards its circumference. The binding glory everywhere, and God light, the blazing seed of fruit, futuridity, into each individual thing in every kingdom. The light seed breaks up into whiteness. The world seems wrong, but the lightness is awkward, into color of spectrums. In each kingdom of nature, 7 great pathways of color, potential in each pathway in the beginning, unfolding into glorious fruition to the close. I see the diamond, the ruby, the emerald, the sapphire, kings of the mineral kingdom, superb in the perfection of their color. Yet at the bottom of these glories exists, imprisoned, slowly being released through the evolutionary process until they stand free and splendid as the kingdom of jewels. In every kingdom it is the same. The free once more imprisoned, that the mightier and more splendid freedom still may be achieved. Bath in the light standing still, which is nirvana. I perceive the imprisoned lightning in its all things. I perceive the light which is dull, the savage, the light which is bright, the man evolved, the light which is glory, the superman, the master. I see color everywhere in the process of transmutation and glorification, of transcendence. There is no blackness anywhere in the sense to negate the light. God said, "Let there be light," and there was and is light everywhere. His light shineth even in our darkness. This is nirvana, the light divine. I am touching perhaps only for a moment its lowest reaches, its densest layers. I cannot conceive down here even this glory, but it leaves in me as I return to the earth a new perception of reality. I have taken a step nearer to the real. There is a greater commandership in the world than I have thought, a deeper identity, a more glorious origin, a more glorious way, a more glorious goal. Around everywhere and at all times are God's sunshine messengers. Every color speaks of his words and his voice. Every form breathes his purpose. I, dust in the sunshine, yet am part of it. And looking upwards to the sun, I see the sign of my own divinity and the embodiment promised to my ultimate achievement. As is our Lord the Sun, so shall we all be, for he has willed it so. Light is language, thought, vesture, and vehicle. A flash of light conveys for us down here a whole philosophy. Light is the will of the sun, the wisdom of the sun, the love of the sun. It is written in the book of Nirvana is bliss. Even for the outermost regions at the frontier, I know Nirvana to be infinity more. Just one glimpse and all things seem to be made new, within me and without me. I remain, yet I am wholly changed. Everything around me seems to be undergoing a process of reevaluation. Even now, everything means far more than before. Every object in every kingdom seems in one way far more a shadow of reality than a reality. For I perceive how feeble and inadequate must be all reflections of the light. I do not know before that they were so feeble. Yet equally true is that every object is far more real, far less of a shadow of reality than I had thought. I see the prison opportunity of form, and I perceive the shadows. I see the unfolding splendor of the light eternal. I perceive the real, and all other words are shadow words. All other worlds are shadow worlds compared with nirvanic worlds. And yet they are more real worlds because they're nirvanic worlds, for I know perceive the seal of God's purpose set upon all things. I must reverence all things in a deeper measure than before. Philosophers talk of pure beings. I seem to be able to sense that pure being must be, not because I have contacted it, but because I have contacted that which is less short of pure beings than all other conscious states I have so far experienced. How true it is the language in this case conceals thought and meaning. I need nirvanic language to convey the sense of nirvana things, as Meyer has said so beautifully. And this is a little poem. Oh, could I tell thee, ye surely would believe it. Oh, could I only say what I have seen. How shall I tell, or how can you receive it? How, till he bringeth you where I have been? It is not only fair to the undistinguished author to say that the quotation given above is but a series of disconnected extracts. I strongly recommend my readers and students carefully the book from which they are taken. It can be procured from the Theosophical Publishing House. The Buddhist monk Adna M., in his book The Wisdoms of the Aras, writes of nirvana as follows. The literal meaning of the word is simply blown out, extinguished as is the flame of a lamp when it has been blown out. But you who have so far followed what has been said concerning it will understand how great it has the error of those who have expounded it as simply tantamount to sheer annihilation. Annihilation is indeed, in one sense, the annihilation, desire of passion, self-delusion. But when we come to try to expound its meanings in terms of others than negative, we are met with an insurmountable difficulty, that namely, all our positive definitions must necessarily be in the term of life we know, in terms of human thoughts. And here we speak of that which is beyond all life, the very goal towards which all life is tending. That's why we have to evolve. And we're going to go through a really big evolution here. To the instructed Buddhist, nirvana stands for the ultimate, the beyond, the goal of life, a state so utterly different from this condition's ever-changing being of the self-dream that we know as a lie, not only quite beyond all naming and describing, but far past even thought itself. And yet, herein lies the wonders of the greatness of the wisdom of the Aras, won by the greatness of the Aryans for the franchisement of man from all the self-wrought bondages. This glory utterly beyond all grasp of thought, this peace that is the very purpose of all strife evolving being lies nearer to us than our nearest consciousness, even as to him who rightly understands it is dearer than the dearest hope that we can frame, past all glories of the moon, sun, still infinitely far beyond the starry heights of consciousness being sublimated to the ultimate, beyond the infinite abyss of that all-embracing AE that wherein these universes have their boundaries bornless home. Illit far remote above and utmost altitudes where thought, with vanity beating wings, fall like some lost bird that had aspired till thin air no longer could support it. Still it dwells higher than every thought we now are thinking, higher than the consciousness that, for the transitory moment, is all that truly can be termed ourselves. Selfless to live and selfless to die, seeking for no reward but only service of the greater life, hoping for no high heaven, hope for no aeon bliss, but only to grow selfless every day. Such is a lesson that pervades alike the Master's life, the Master's teachings, thereby may peace come to all life at last. Dr. Besant refers to this subject in the recent lecture said, there is in the Buddhic philosophy a wonderful sentence of the Lord Gautama Buddha, where he is striving to indicate in human language something that would be intangible about the conditions of nirvana. You find it in the Chinese translations of the Dhammapada, and in the Chinese editions has been translated into English by Tubner Oriental Series. He puts it there that unless there were nirvana, there could be nothing. He uses the various phrases in order to dictate what he means, taking the uncreated and then connecting with the created, taking the real, then connecting with the unreal. He sums it up by saying nirvana is and that if it were not, naught else could be. That is an attempt, if one can, if one may call it so with reverence, to say what cannot be said. It amplifies the useless there exists, the uncreate, and invisible and the real. We could not have a universe at all. You have there, then, the indications that nirvana is a plenum, not a void, and the idea should be fundamental, fixed in your mind, in your studies of every great system of philosophy. So often the expression used may seem to indicate a void, hence the Western idea of annihilation. If you think of it as fullness, you will realize that the conscious expands more and more without losing utterly the sense of identity. If you could think of a center of a circle without a circumference, you would glimpse the truth. The man who has only realized the marvelous unity can never forget it, can never quite as he has before, for however deeply he may veil himself in the lower vehicles in order to help and save others, however closely he may be bound to the cross of matter, cribbed, cabined, confined, he can never forget that his eyes have seen the King in his beauty. He has beheld the land in which is ever far off, yet very near. Within us all, time, if we could only see it, because to reach nirvana we need not only go away to some far distant heaven, but only open our consciousness to its glory. As the Lord Buddha said long ago, do not complain or cry or pray, but to open your eyes and see, for the light is all about you. It is so wonderful, so beautiful, so far beyond anything of which man have ever dreamt, for which they have ever prayed. It is forever and forever. The land that is very far off is a quotation from the prophecy Isaiah, but strangely enough it is a mistranslation. Isaiah did not speak to the lands which is very far off, but to the land of the far distant, which is a very different idea and one of great beauty. It suggests that the prophet had some experience of these higher planes and was comparing in his thought the splendor of the star-strewn fields of heaven with the cramped catacombs through which we crawl on the earth, for that is what his life is as compared with the higher one, a blind crawling through the dark and devious ways as compared with the splendid purposeful life and utter realization of the divine will ensouling and working through the will of those who dwell therein. The work of the adherent, a mighty work of the adherent has before him to climb the topmost heights of the utmost of human planes of existence. While he is doing it, he must cast off the remaining 5 or 10 great fetters, which are Ruparayga, desires of beauty, of form, for physical existence in the form, even excluding that of the heaven worlds. Aruparaga, desires for formless life. Mano, M-A-N-O, pride. And Uddhachcha, agitation or irritability, the possibility of being disturbed by anything. And Avijjja is ignorance. The 6th and 7th fetter include not only the idea of Raj or attractions, but also of the Dwesha or repulsion. Casting off of these fetters implies a quality of character such that nothing in the lower planes of the form or the higher or formless planes can hold him by its attraction, even for a moment, or can repel him by the disagreeableness, if he has to work within or therein. As the eighth fetter, Mano, is filed away, he forgets the greatness of his own achievements, and pride becomes impossible for him, since now he stands always in the light and measures himself against no lower thing. Then comes the perfectly serenity which naught can disturb, leaving him free to acquire all knowledge, to become practically omniscient as regards our planetary change. The fifth initiation. Now does the candidate approach the fifth initiation, that of the adept. He hath wrought the purpose through that which made him man. So now he can take the final step that makes him Superman, Asekha, as the Buddhists call him. But he has no more to learn and has exhausted the possibilities. The human kingdom of nature, Jivanmukta, as the Hindus speak of him, a liberated life, a free being, free not because of any separate independence, but because his will is one with the universal will, that of the one without a second. He stands ever in the light of nirvana, even in his waking consciousness, should he choose to remain on the earth in the physical body. And when out of that body he raises still higher into the monadic plane, beyond not merely our words but our thoughts. Here again is Lord Buddha. Measure not with words the measurable, nor sink the string of thought into the fathomless. Who asks doth ear, who answer ear, say naught. In Christianity, symbolism and ascension and the descent of the Holy Ghost stands for the attainment of adeptship. For the adept does ascend clearly above humanity, beyond this earth, although if he is chosen as did the Christ, he may return to teach and help. As he ascends, he becomes one with the Holy Spirit, and invariably the first thing he does with his new power is to pour it down upon his disciples, even as Christ poured down his tongue of fire upon the heads of his followers at the Feast of Pentecost. A glance at any of the diagrams showing the principles in man which have been published in the early books will show the relationship between the manifestation of the Logos and the Pratanic cosmic planes, and in the soul of man we shall see that the triple Atma, the threefold spirit of man, lies in the lower parts of the nirvanic or the spirit plane, and that the lower manifestations of the third person, God the Holy Spirit, is in the higher part of the same plane. The adept becomes one with him at all levels, and that is the real explanation of the Christ feast of Whitsunday, 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 the festival of the Holy Spirit. It is an account of the unity with him, and the Asekha can take pupils. The adherent, though he has very much to teach, still works under the adept, acts for him, and carries out his orders on the physical plane, but does not take the pupil from him, because he has not yet the special link with the Holy Spirit. And then it says beyond adeptship, and then I am finished this chapter. So we'll finish this, and I'll talk for a little bit, then I'm going to end the day. Beyond adeptship. Above the initiation of the adepts lies the Kohan, and further on still others, of which I will speak in the chapter of the occult hierarchy. The ladder of being extended up into the cloud of light, into which few of us as yet can penetrate. And when we ask those who stand higher than we, and who know infinitely more than we do, all they can say is that it extends beyond their sight also. They know very many more steps of it than we do, but it goes still further outwards and upwards to the unimaginable heights of glory, and no one knows the end. Although what I have just said is obviously accurate, and none of us can see the end of that ladder. And a lot of people talk about Jacob's ladder, but this universal energy goes higher and higher and higher all the time. That none of us can see the end of that ladder, and that the word of those in the higher ranks of the hierarchy is almost incomprehensible. Still, I wish to make this perfectly clear, that their existence and the work is as real and definite as anything in the world, nay, more so, and that there is not the slightest vagueness but our vision of those great ones, though I know but little about the higher parts of his work. For many years past I have seen the Bodhisattvas constantly, almost daily engaged in their work. I have very many times seen the Lord of the world in his wonderful and incomprehensible existence. So they are to me people just as real as any whom I know, and am as certain as can possibly be of their existence and of something of the part that they play in the world. Of the tremendous truth of what I can say about them I am utterly certain, and yet I cannot explain them, nor understand more than the fragments of what they are doing. I have seen Dai Kohans and planetary spirits and administrators for our solar system. I know absolutely of their existence and the transcendent glories of these people, but what their tremendous life works may be I do not know at all. I have myself seen the manifestations of the logos of the solar system, seen him as he is among his peers, and yet millions of times more than the unspeakable grandeur that I have seen in him must be that which they see when they look at him. And Arjun and the Bhagavad Gita is said to have been seen the divine form. So, yeah, Arjuna is in the Bhagavad Gita. So I have seen without the shadows of a doubt. And I want to put my testimony on record that these things are so. I dare say that I lay myself open to a certain amount of scorn for writing this to people will say, who are you to say these things? But I have seen, and it would be cowardly to refuse to bear witness. I have repeatedly declared, both in speech and in writing, that I wish no one to base his belief in theosophy upon my assertions of mine. I think that each man should study the system for himself and come to his own conclusions. The fundamental reasons for his acceptance of this doctrine being either that he knows it from his own experience or that he finds it the most reasonable hypothesis that presents before him, but that in no way alters the fact that I have evidence to give to those who care to listen to it, evidence which I have placed before them in this and other books. Who have to write upon theosophy in the 20th century can fully affirm St. John's plain statement of nearly 2,000 years ago, that which was from the beginning, which we have heard, which we have seen with our own eyes, which we have looked upon and our hands have held, that which we have seen and heard declare unto you. We who have been bear witness, whether the world accepts our testimony, makes little difference to us. Then it says, whoso has felt the Spirit of the highest cannot confound, nor doubt him, nor deny. Ye with one voice, O world, thou deniest, stand thou on that side, for on this I am. St. Paul. And it says the seven paths. Immediately beyond the ASEKHA initiation, this higher path opens up in seven great ways among the adepts, must take his choice. On this subject, I cannot do better than quote what was said by man, whence, how, and whither. When the human kingdom is traversed and man stands on the threshold of his superhuman life, a liberated spirit, 7 paths open before him for his choosing. He may enter into the blissful omniscience, the omnipotent of nirvana. He active with activities far beyond our knowledge to become, pre-chance, in some further worlds of avatar or divine incarnation. This is sometimes called taking the Dharmakaya vesture. He may enter on the spiritual period, a phrase covering unknown meanings, among them probably that of taking these SAMBHOGAKAYA vestures. He may become part of the treasured house of the spiritual forces on which the agents of the Logos draws for their work, taking the Nirmankaya vestures. He may remain a member of the occult hierarchy which rules and guards the world in which he has reached perfection. He may pass on to the next chain to avoid in building up its form. He may enter the splendid angel or diva evolution. He may give himself to the immediate service of the Logos, to be used by him in any part of the solar system, his servant and messenger, who lives but to carry his will and to do his work over the whole of the system which he rules. As a general, he has his staff, the members of which carry his message to any part of the field. So are these staffs of him who command all, ministers of his that do his pleasure. This seems to be considered a very hard path, perhaps the greatest sacrifice open to the adept. It is therefore regarded as carrying with a great distinction. A member of general staff has no physical body, but makes one for himself, a KRYASHAKTI, the power to make. But the matter of the globe to which he is sent, the staff contains beings at very different levels from that of adeptship upwards. The man who takes the Dharma Makaya robe retires into the monad and drops even his own nirvanic atom. This SAMBHOGAKAYA retains his nirvanic atom and shows himself as a triple spirit. The NIRMANAKAYA retains his causal body and also the permanent atoms which he has carried all through his evolution, so that any moment he can materialize around the mental, astral, and physical bodies, if he so desires. He definitely keeps his link with the world from which he has come, in order that he may supply the reservoirs from which spiritual power is poured down upon the world. The NIRMANAKAYA are spoken of as the voices of silence, as forming the guardian walls which preserve the world from the further and far greater misery and sorrow. For those who do not understand the inner meanings, that seems to imply that the misery and sorrow comes to the world from outside, and that these great ones ward it off. But that is not so at all, for all the trouble in the world comes from those who suffer it. Each man his own lawgiver, each decrees his own doom or reward. But the duty of the NIRMANAKAYA is a supply of great store of spiritual forces for helping of man. All the time they generate this force, taking no part for themselves, but putting it all at the service of the brotherhood for their use in lifting the heavy burdens of the world. It will thus be seen that those who attain adeptship, comparatively few remain on our earth as members of the occult hierarchy, but these and their works are of vital importance. So we will devote to this subject the remaining chapters of this book. So the last chapters I'll be going into. This next one is the work of the masters.